Welcome back, everybody, to another episode, a 27th episode of Unbashful. You all know me if you've been here before. I am your host, Nicholas Doucette, and I want to thank you for tuning in for another episode of Unbashful. Now, for this week, we're going to be discussing impactful films, right? When you watch a movie, depending on what film you watch, you can watch it for the sole purpose of entertainment, right? Which is, generally speaking, that is the main purpose of watching a film. It's entertainment. It's a form of escapism from our everyday, things that we got to go through in life. However, there's some films that come across every now and then that leave you questioning. Maybe questioning things about your life. Maybe questioning things that you do. Philosophical questions like, what is your purpose? They'll leave you scratching your head. And sometimes films make us take action on certain things in life. Maybe things we've been delaying or things we've wanted to do but haven't started, and we were just looking for that little bit of fire to lit inside us. And some films do that. Some films inspire people to do things that they've wanted to do, that they've dreamed about doing for a very long time. Now, we're going to go over some of these films. Now, when I say impactful, that doesn't always mean it's necessarily positive. It doesn't always mean that you're going to get off the couch and, take on humanity and be the next Nobel Prize winner. Not all films do that. Some films, as I mentioned, make you maybe change your perspective on a certain subject, right? Some films can also be very serious, subject matter. Things that maybe people don't want to talk about as much, like mental health. Maybe that can educate you more on subjects like that. So I think movies are very, very important. Now, I believe personally that you can learn something from any movie. Even when you go watch a Marvel movie. Sometimes there's very much Shakespearean-like themes in these films that we just don't realize, but we have to kind of take a step back and say, okay, yeah, I see that, okay. Kind of like metaphorical, yeah. So if you really look at each movies, even the silliest ones, and maybe except for films like Jackass, when you're just supposed to turn your brain off and watch some dudes beat the shit out of each other. But I believe in almost every cinematic piece of art, there is something to learn from it. Whether it's something really profound or something like maybe, you know what I mean? Now I'm going to discuss why some of these films will impact us. And the first of which is relatability, right? Oftentimes, us as a society we all go through our own, problems, our own situations. Some people suffer very tragic incidents in their life, things that have affected them. And oftentimes people will, myself included, will come across a film that strikes a chord in our soul. And we can almost see ourselves like a mirror through the character on screen. While not exactly identical, we can relate to what's happening. And those are the films that stay with us for years, that leave us thinking. So relatability is something that not all films are going to strive for, of course. Some films are fictitious, right? They're telling, folk tales or like I said, Marvel movies, DC films, sci-fi fantasy. Like, it's not necessarily the priority for every film, but there's a lot of grounded films out there. Like I'm sure you've probably seen. There's a film called Beautiful Boy with Timothée Chalamet and Steve Carell. I love that film. Now, that's not a relatable film to me because I've never struggled with drug abuse and drug addiction. But I know that there's people out there that do. So, that film could possibly help them in their road to recovery, right? Because it does have a very happy ending. Nick Sheff, I think in the film he relapsed 4 times, but I think in real life, I was watching an interview, I think in real life, Timothée Chalamet said that he relapsed like 13 times, which is unheard of, right? But he was able to overcome and beat that demon. Now, I mean, I want to be very careful here because, like I said, I don't struggle with addiction. So I don't know if that's something you ever fully beat. It's just something that maybe you contain. But long story short, he found a way to live healthy and not resort to drugs and put that in the rear view, right? It's very inspiring. Like, you don't have to be a drug addict to watch that film and walk out feeling inspired, motivated, you know? That's what I mean. Like, obviously films that are relatable to certain, you know, audience segments will hit very specifically home for them. But for someone like me that, as I mentioned, I don't struggle. I've never struggled with drug abuse, but I still walked out and I still felt something, right? So relatability is very important. The next thing is films pulling from things that take place in our reality. Often storytellers will write about what they know. They may not write something, you know, like an autobiography, right? But they have a story themselves. Everybody has a story, right? I know some people are going through tough times and people that struggle with, you know, depression, they feel like their life doesn't have meaning, but in reality, that's not true. We all have a story to tell. So often filmmakers and actors too, they bring their own personal experience to a story, right? That's often how they kind of express emotion on screen by, you know, recollecting past experiences from their life, whether it be positive or negative. And filmmakers do that. When they're telling a story, what they'll often do is pull from things in our society or from their own, you know, personal experiences to help kind of illustrate what's happening in the film. And I think sometimes it can be done beautifully, and sometimes it doesn't always work. So I mentioned escapism, right? Now, often that can be looked at as a negative kind of term. I think it's important, to a degree, to have some sort of form of escapism. Whether that's you like to play video games, go for a run, play basketball. I like to do that. Watch films. Now, you can't, like I said, there has to be a sort of degree where you realize, like, okay, this is temporary. I'm just doing this to release some stress, forget about things going on in my life, and then I'll return to reality or whatever. You never escape reality, and you never should try to escape reality. No. But I think it's within reason. I think it's important to have forms of escapism. And I think very specifically, they should be used during times of grief, times of mourning, right? Or even on the flip side, you're feeling happy, you're feeling euphoric. You want to watch films that fall in line with that emotion, right? But I think more often than not, I think people that are going through something will often use film and television as a resource. And I am the exact same way, right? Let me just think of one for myself off the top. I often watch Good Will Hunting, right? Now, I'm not a genius. I'm not this guy that has a photographic memory like Matt Damon. But the things that I relate to with his character, because I've watched Good Will Hunting hundreds of times. Everybody knows that film. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. It's fantastic. But I'm a relatively young individual. I'm 22, and often people my age will feel lost, right? Especially we're getting to that age where many of us are coming out of university and we just don't know what to do, right? Some of us feel like we've wasted our time. Some of us feel like, you know, excited that we're done, but now we just like, what do we do, right? And with Good Will Hunting, the reason why that's a film for me that's impactful for me is that you have this guy who has so much potential, right? Has such a high intellect, but he doesn't want to take advantage of that, and he doesn't want to do something with that because he's gone through traumatic experiences, right? He has trust issues. He has, he often will. It's been as it was eloquently explained in the film by Robin Williams, rest in peace, that he often will not commit to relationships because he is afraid that he's going to be abandoned or that he's going to break his heart, right? Because he grew up in a foster home. So, no, like I said, those are things, growing up in a foster home and all that, I can't relate to those. But basically, I'm kind of getting away from my point here. But he sort of feels lost, right? He's going from job to job, working as a janitor. By the way, no shame on if that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. But I'm saying specifically in his film, in this movie, we have a character that has so much potential, but he just hasn't broken through that wall. Excuse me. He just hasn't broken through that wall. And he's got his friends around him, and he's got his comfort zone, but he doesn't want to leave that comfort zone. Right? And Ben Affleck, I love Ben Affleck. I think the friendship that him and Matt Damon have in that film is so great because they have a beautiful conversation towards the end of that film. When, I'm going to paraphrase, but Ben Affleck says in 50 years, I'll still be working here. And that's okay. But you got something that we don't. And I'm not just going to sit around and watch you not do something about that, right? You have a skill set that 1 in a million, probably even, slimmer odds. You have so much potential, and I don't want to see you waste it, right? And he says some famous line. He's like, if you're still here working construction, I'll fucking kill you, right? Obviously, he's not speaking literally, but he's trying to emphasize the fact that, he wants to see him succeed. He wants to see him leave this comfort zone. He admits, yeah, I have fun going to the bar with you, watching the Patriots game, right? But, I want to see you leave this town, and I want to see you do something with yourself because you have potential. Now, of course, most of us don't have a photographic memory, but many of us still have deep potential inside ourselves. We just haven't broken through that wall. So that's a perfect example of a film that is very, very impactful for me because I relate to that situation a little bit, right? There's times, even to this day, where I feel lost. I feel a little bit depressed. Because I have dreams and I have aspirations, but it's just sometimes we can go through dark corners, right? And we question our purpose, as I'm sure a lot of people. It's hard. I've often heard people say that going through your 20s is actually the most difficult decade of your life because you're often you're learning about yourself, right? You're trying new things. You're trying on different outfits. You're often trying different, I don't know how to put this, almost like identities. You know what I'm saying? Not identities. Not saying you wake up one morning you're Jim Carrey, you wake up the next you're Vin Diesel or something. No, I just mean we're learning about ourselves. We're still growing, right? Often parts of our brains, are not even fully developed, right? I mean, most of the time it's women that have their brain developed. I think I don't want to talk about things I don't know about, but to my understanding, I think women's brains develop quicker than men's brains. But anyways, I'm getting off topic here. Let's get back to what we're actually talking about. So, yeah, films as a resource. That's what I was saying. When we're going through something, positive or negative, but I think the majority of the time when someone's going through something traumatic or, they went through a breakup or whatever, they'll often resort to specific films that often the plot will reflect what they're going through. And it helps them. It helps them grieve through that process. And I think that's why films and art are so important. They're important to telling history, and they're important just in learning something and helping us get through periods of life. But anyways, I have 5 films, for me personally, that have been very impactful for me. And it'll be different for everybody, of course. And if I really sit back and look at these films, I'm sure I could add more Of course. I'm probably going to finish this podcast and go over my list and say like, wow, I forgot that. But so this is no particular order. This is not a ranking. These are just 5 movies that have left me thinking. The first one is The Pursuit of Happiness with Will Smith. Now, in this film, it follows it's a real life story of a guy named Chris. I can't remember his last name, but his name is Chris, right? Played by Will Smith, beautifully. And actually his son, Jaden Smith, is also in the film as well. He plays his son. Now, this is a guy, hustling, grinding, trying to sell these electronic devices to hospitals. But, the hospitals, they're just not buying it, right? So he's working his damnedest, hustling every day, running across town, but he's not making any money, right? Nobody wants to buy these devices off him. He's struggling financially. He's in a bad place. And it just progressively gets worse throughout the film. And there's even one point where he literally loses his apartment and him and his son are pretty much homeless, right? They literally sleep in a subway bathroom. So you want to talk rock bottom. We can all sit here and, we could think we're going through rock bottom, right? We got fired from our job, whatever. Not trying to, those are shitty situations. But if you really want to put your life in perspective and see if you've really hit rock bottom, watch that movie and watch his story. Because I tell you, every time I'm feeling lazy or I'm feeling uninspired or I feel like I'm in a rut, I feel like I'm in a hole, I watch that movie. That movie gets me off the couch and it lights that fire in me to want to do something, right? Because there is a happy ending, right? This guy, he's down on his luck. Everything is going terrible for him. His girlfriend leaves him, pretty much abandons him and his son, right? And it's just them two on their own. They're sleeping in homeless shelters. They're sleeping in bathrooms, as I just mentioned. But through and through, right? He's still grinding. He's still hustling. He's trying to become a stockbroker. And he has zero education in that sort of field. But he works his ass off. He pesters the dude that works at the stock brokerage firm. Pesters him, right? And eventually, he gets his foot in the door. And one of my favorite scenes in the film is when he goes in for that job interview, right? And he just came back from painting the apartment because I think he agreed. I think the landlord agreed, like, okay, you've missed rent, but I'll agree to let you stay for one more month. I'll give you that extra bit of time to pay your rent if you paint the apartment. So he had just came back from painting his apartment, literally was not dressed appropriately to go to an interview. He had paint literally on his face, his hands. If you've seen the film, you know the scene I'm talking about. And of course, he walks in and everybody in this building, they're all, 3-piece suit, looking all slick. They don't look impressed, and nobody would. And he makes the best out of a bad situation. And there's a funny line where the guy, he's like, the interviewer, he says, "What do you think I would say if somebody walked in what you're wearing?" I'm paraphrasing, by the way. "Do you think I should let that guy have a job?" He says something about his shirt, and then Will Smith responds and says, "Well, he better have been wearing a nice damn pair of pants." And everybody laughed. So that's one of my favorite scenes. But anyways, the movie ends where, spoiler, the film's like over 10 years old, I think. He works his ass off, comes out of the bottom, the gutter, and eventually becomes a stockbroker. And if anybody, a stockbroker makes, those boys are doing good. And girls and women and all genders. They're doing good. They're making good money, millions. So he came out on top, and I guarantee you, if you asked him, would he change any of it? I'm sure he probably wouldn't. As tough as that was, now I'm not speaking for this individual, of course not, but those are things that build character. Those tough times, the suffering, right? Now, we don't want to go through it. I don't want to go through it, but going through these experiences, they mold you, right? They change your perspective. So I love that film. Next is Joker. The reason why Joker, to me, I think is such a profound film is that it really kind of reflects things that our society is still going through, and that's the stigma of mental health. Now, in terms of, medicine and treatment and recovery, techniques and whatnot. Like, I'm not a psychologist, obviously, but I think it's pretty obvious. We have come a long way. Like, we're not doing lobotomies anymore and all those horrific practices from back in whatever, like I can't even remember where. Hopefully lobotomies still aren't going on, but to my understanding, they're not. So we have progressed, but still, like, there's still a lot of work to do in regards to mental health. It still has very much a lot of people have preconceived, notions about mental health, and it's often frowned upon still by many people as a profession and as an actual, illness. Like, I'm just speaking in broad terms because there's obviously tons of different mental illnesses. But the thing about Joker is that we see a man break because he just feels like there's just no support for him. Right? It's seen in the beginning of the film that, Gotham is, I think it has something to do with the laws and the taxes. They had to basically shut down the whole, unit that he was being supported by. Like, he couldn't see his therapist anymore. So now I want to be clear. I am not in any way condoning Arthur Fleck's behavior in the film. He was straight up a criminal. He was killing people, right? I'm not condoning that at all. But what I'm saying is just the core messages about mental health is that obviously that film took place in a different time when there was still a long way to come. We still hadn't, we still had work to do when it came to mental health and treatment and whatnot. But many of that, we're still kind of working through the cracks of that to this day. Right. And like I said, we've come a long way. Absolutely. But there's still a lot of work to do. So those are the things that I observe about the Joker. Right. Like, we see an individual just crack. Right. But once again, not condoning it, because mental health is not an excuse for violent behavior. It's not an excuse for violence. OK, so that's not what I'm trying to say. But we feel like he just had nobody. Right. Even his own mother was. She needed treatment of herself, so he couldn't lean on her, right? So that's why, for Joker specifically, those are the things that I pulled from the film. Let me know if you agree. But the next film on this list is Marriage Story, starring Scarlett Johansson. Sorry, I was drawing a blank, and I'm drawing a blank again. The other actor, incredible actor. He played Kylo Ren. What's his name? He was in House of Gucci. He's a really good actor. I'm drawing a blank. Come on. Fuck. What's his name? Adam Driver. There we go. Starring Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson. And basically, it's the story of a couple going through a divorce. And it's probably the most realistic portrayal of a divorce that I've seen. Now, of course, I'm not married, so I've never gone through a divorce, but I've witnessed divorces, and I've been, a bystander. I've been an outsider, and I've kind of seen in a little bit of that process and how it can tear apart families, ruin relationships. And I think the film is so beautifully directed by Greta Gerwig's boyfriend, who's also, or maybe husband, sorry. He's also a filmmaker. It's so great. Like, they're Greta Gerwig and her husband, I think his name is Noah. Let me find out. Amazing director. Let me see. The Marriage Story. Director. Let me see. Yes, Noah Baumbach. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Incredible filmmaker. That film is incredibly, I keep saying incredibly, it's beautifully directed. The performances are fantastic, and I love that film because of relationships, right? Now, this is something that a lot of people can go through, myself included, all right? We've all been through, you know, not all of us, but many of us have been through, you know, romantic relationships, and some have worked out and some haven't, right? And this shows one that clearly is falling out. Scarlett Johansson wants to get a divorce. Adam Driver didn't, and they're going through this whole process, and then they also have a son, and it's incredible. I love that movie. That movie. I often like, because I've mentioned before, I want to be an actor, right? That is one performance specifically by Adam Driver. The scene when I think they're sitting down, and I think this was like, you know, some time had passed since, you know, Scarlett approached him in the film with the divorce, you know, paperwork saying, hey, I want to do this. So, and I think they were just having a conversation, and they both just broke down, but specifically Adam Driver in tears. And that was, to this day, I think that's still his best performance that I've seen. I loved him in House of Gucci, but I still think his best performance is in that film. And in fact, also, you know, quick side note, Francis Ford Coppola is making apparently a film he's wanted to make for over 20 years, but he can't get the picture financed. He's literally pouring his own money, hundreds of millions of dollars, for a film I think called Megalopolis. And he originally wanted Christian Bale, but apparently he couldn't get him due to scheduling issues. Probably had to do with Thor: Love and Thunder. And the other film that he's doing that was presented at CinemaCon called, I think it was called Amsterdam. So that probably had something to do with it. So we got Adam Driver, who I think is an incredible... If you can't get Christian Bale, I'm not complaining if Adam Driver is my next choice. In fact, I think right now, I think they're both... You know, I'm not going to compare and contrast and all that, but... He's a great actor. So he's going to be in Francis Ford Coppola's next film. He's going to be the lead. So I'm very excited for that. But Marriage Story is one of them. So I often will go to that film if I'm going through something in a relationship. I'll often go to that film and watch that. That really helps me. But the next film, Big Fish, starring Ewan McGregor. I love this movie. I've seen this movie ever since I was a kid. Pretty much what it's about is Ewan McGregor. The film bounces back and forth between Ewan McGregor, like an older version of his character, and then a younger version being Ewan McGregor. And basically, it's the story of this old man, you know, talking to his family, telling his son's fiance just stories about his life. And the son can't stand it. He's been hearing these stories his whole life, and he always says, you know, Dad, like, these are all folk tales. It's complete bullshit. And in reality, it might be, but it's exciting. When I watch that film, I feel like a kid at a campfire, and like my dad or something is sitting there telling, like, once upon a time, you know what I mean? Like, that's what I feel like. It's pretty much just a story of a guy's life, and this dude does everything. It's a film I often go to when I want to kind of feel like this urge to like go on some kind of like adventure, you know, travel or something, because he does everywhere. He works at like a carnival as like a carny. He enlists in the army. He finds love. He just does everything. He's like this dude that literally lives this like life that in reality nobody will probably ever live in terms of adventure, but he just travels across the world, meets all these different interesting people. He meets the giant Carl, I think his name is, and he sort of tags along with him. It's just like it's just that movie kind of like warms my heart, you know, like it's good for the soul when you watch it. It's very much, I draw a lot of comparisons to that film and Forrest Gump. Forrest Gump is also very similar. It's this guy who literally just does everything, right? He, like I said, enlists in the army, becomes a ping pong world champion. He plays college football. Like, I think at the end of the film, he gets like shares of Apple when Apple was first starting. So it's just like it's a nice film to watch. You know, it gives you this sort of sense of like discovery and like adventure, as I've mentioned. So, but the number one, it's not a ranking, but the next film, the last film on my list, is Whiplash, starring Miles Teller and J.K. Simmons. Now, if you don't know the story of this film, It was actually originally adapted from a short film that J.K. Simmons was also in, and apparently it got so much buzz and such good reception that they eventually adapted it, financed the picture, gave it a bunch of money to make it a full feature. It was a different actor in the short film that played Miles Teller's character. My first time seeing Miles Teller was in that film he did. I think it's called 21 and Over, right? It's a decent movie, funny, right? Raunchy comedy. And after I watched that, I thought Miles Teller, because I'd never seen him in anything else, I thought, he's a good actor. He's probably just going to be one of these guys, and he was just going to do these, American Pie films, and that's pretty much it. But no, my God, he is a fantastic actor. And I talked about on my last episode, The Offer, which is a Paramount Plus series showing the process of how The Godfather was made. He stars in that as the producer Al Ruddy. And he's also in the new Top Gun movie, which I really do want to see. I haven't seen it yet. Once I do, I'll talk about it here. But yeah, in this film, he plays an aspiring drummer, right? And he often in the film will refer to his idols, the guys that inspire him. And it's similar to Pursuit of Happiness. It's a movie that really kind of gets me off my ass and makes me just want to conquer the world, And it's a very inspiring film. This guy, he gives everything. He gives everything to pursue his career and chase his dreams of being a drummer, which I often relate to because I really want to be an actor and I'm all in. I fucking love it. And if you want to do something, if you want to pursue something like that, it's going to come with sacrifices. If you want to pursue anything that you really care about in life, it's gonna come with some sacrifices. That's just how it is. Whether it's sacrificing hanging out with friends, or going out and partying, or playing video games, or consuming less content, sacrifices will come along the way. If you ask any person that's successful, I'm sure they will tell you it did not come easy, and it came with a lot of sacrifices. And so he wants to be this drummer, and he's aspiring to join this very specific club or group. I'm sure I'm probably using the wrong terminology. I'm not into music, so I'm not familiar with the vernacular of it, but he wants to join this I don't want to call it a band. He wants to join this certain music group that's very, very difficult to get into, and the conductor of this is a very respected individual in that space in music, and that's J.K. Simmons' character. He's a professor, he's a teacher, and he's very, very strict, very rude, very mean, very brutal, very honest, and he asks a lot out of his students because he wants to bring the best out of them. Right? He's like that coach that you had that you look back and when you had that coach, you thought, damn, this guy just won't get the fuck off my back. But you look back and you think, damn, I think the reason why he was pushing me so hard was because he saw potential and he wanted to get the best out of me, right? Now, we find out in the film that I think he pushed people a little bit too far because one drummer or one person in this music group actually killed himself, committed suicide, unfortunately, which is obviously very sad. And in the film, you find out it's because he was pushed over to the edge very much by J.K. Simmons' character. He's very, very rude. He's often it's a lot of people draw the comparison to Gordon Ramsay, right? I think that's a great comparison. There's literally a scene where he's trying to find somebody that is out of tune. And he often will tell I'm just going to call them the band. Correct, somebody in the comics that's more familiar with this kind of subject than I am. Let me know what I'm missing. But let's just call it the band. He asks the band certain parts, he'll go to the clarinet and the trumpet and the guitarists and the bass players, and he'll ask them quickly perform a note or a line or something because he wants to find out who is out of tune. And once he finds that individual, he fucking lays into him, and the poor guy is in tears, and he's a relatively larger individual. And he just can't look J.K. Simmons in the eyes while he's just being verbally, destroyed by him. So he's looking down and he's crying. He's obviously very upset. And J.K. Simmons is like, what are you looking down there for? There's no fucking Big Mac. And So basically, he pushes Miles Teller to literally the brink of insanity. Miles Teller almost gets himself killed sometimes. We see he's trying to rush to get to this performance that they have scheduled, and he literally gets hit by a transport truck. And usually when that happens, you gotta stay. You gotta wait for the police to show up. You gotta report the scene. You gotta exchange insurance. This guy's like, nope, fuck that. I gotta get to this fucking performance. I don't care that I'm bleeding. I have to do this. That's some fucking determination right there. And yeah, so it's basically the story of somebody trying to achieve greatness and pushing himself to the absolute limit and being pushed by somebody, being J.K. Simmons, to the absolute limit. So anyways, those are 5 films. I'm putting up to 5 films, not 10. Those are the 5 films that really have impacted me. Some of you may have seen these films. If you have, let me know if you feel similarly or they just didn't work for you in that regard, which is totally fine. Or let me know what your list is. I'm very curious. This is very specific to everybody. Everybody's list of impactful films is going to be different for different reasons, right? So let me know what your list is down in the comments below. Now, the next topic I want to go and discuss is titled, How has the age of social media and content, how has it affected our attention span? Now, the word content, right? We hear that a lot. It's a broad term to describe forms of media. This is one of them, right? What you're watching, this is one of them. Film is a form of content. YouTube, Twitter, social media, right? It's all connected. It's content. You could swipe through Instagram. If you see a picture that you like, and you like that photo, and you look at it for a second, you're consuming content, right? TikTok, it's all content, right? Has that affected our attention span? I think the answer is yes. I think it's very, very obvious. I can speak from my own personal experience. I think it's certainly affected our attention span because we're living in a time where everything in terms of entertainment, media, news is at the tip of our finger. It's at our beck and call. If we want to know anything, we can get it within minutes, seconds sometimes. And it's the same for entertainment. If I want to watch a guy kick a soccer ball 100 yards and see him get it in a net, like in a basketball, like some dude perfect shit. If I want to see that, I can. Take me no more than like 90 seconds, a minute and a half to see that happen. So we have this overabundance of content at the tip of our fingers, right? And not just content. If we want to post on social media, we want that like gratification, we could get that very, very quickly. So what it's done now, it's like desensitized us from being able to just sit down and just watch. Like, I'm going to use movies, for example, because that's mostly what I talk about. It's often affected like how we just sit down and like enjoy a film. Like often people, and myself included, will tap out after 10 minutes of watching something. It's like, oh, it's not for me. I'm done. On to the next one, right? And I think a lot of these streaming platforms, I'll take that for an example, many of them have taken the approach of quantity over quality. And I'm looking specifically at Netflix. It will take me sometimes over an hour just to find something to watch on Netflix because there's just so much. There's so much. You go through every category, right? Horror, comedy, drama, whatever, right? There's like fucking 50, 60 films per category, right? There's too much. There's too much. There have been studies done that if you give an individual less options of things to choose, right, he'll make up his mind quicker on something to pick. Whereas if you give someone like, I don't know, let's say you're serving a dish to somebody, and you give them 4 options of you could have one of these entrees, right? I think the person is likely going to decide on one of those 4 entrees quicker than if you would have presented 20 different entrees. I mean, that's not some genius concept. I think most people can probably understand that. And the same is true of streaming. Netflix is just the biggest one I think of, and I'm sure there's others. There's just so much fucking choices, so much content. It's just too much. It takes forever to decide on a film, and sometimes I just don't watch anything because I'm just like so tapped out and exhausted from trying to decide. I just give up and I say, fuck it, I'll just watch a 10-minute YouTube video and go about my day. There's a lot of people that have that same thought process as me. That's why I prefer streaming platforms like Crave, for example. For those of you who don't know, Crave is our gateway in Canada to watching HBO, because we don't have HBO Max. I still don't completely understand why. If somebody knows better than I will, they can explain. But I like Crave because there's not as much content. There's still quite a lot, but it's very, some of it's very niche. So I do have a bias towards many of the niche content they have. I'll admit that. So it works for me. It doesn't work for everybody. But I like Crave because Crave, less content, and I feel like the quality overall is better. Now, that's just my opinion. You could disagree with me. That's totally fine. Netflix is still probably the king. Apple TV is another one. I like Apple TV. There's not as much content on Apple TV. You have amazing shows. Like everybody is. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he was telling me about a show called Severance, which I've heard so many people talking about that. So, and that's not to say there's not good original content on Netflix. There is, obviously. Ozark, Better Call Saul. Actually, is that Netflix original? I'm not sure. I don't think it is. Okay, so you have Ozark, Stranger Things. If you look at films, there's tons of movies. I can't even think of one because there's just so many. So basically going back to the main topic, I think there's just too much content, and I think it's fucked with our attention span, myself included. I'll be honest with you, I struggle sometimes to watch a movie at home, right? Because I'm just there's just so much things around me that are just kind of pulling me out of the sort of mindset to just sit down and just let the film and the narrative and the story kind of guide you. That's why, for me, I often feel like I can only really watch a film nowadays if I go to the theater, because it's like a psychological thing. It's I'm going there for one reason. I'm going there to watch a movie. I'm paying my $15 to get my ticket and to watch my movie, and that's it, right? Whereas at home, it's just there's so much technology around us that can just distract us. So sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes I struggle to even watch a movie at home because there's just so much other things going on around me. And I think a lot of that has to do with social media. I'll be honest with you, I fucking hate social media at this point. I'll be honest with you, I just don't like it. And the only reason really why I'm on it is to promote the podcast, because I can't deny social media is arguably the most important tool to market anything, to market a platform, a business, anything. So I can't just ignore that. And obviously I'm not a big enough podcast yet to hire somebody to just specifically handle my social media, because if I had the money and if I had the, presence and a large enough following as a podcaster, I would hire somebody to take care of all the social media shit for me. You would see me piece the fuck out and I would not be on social media. I just don't like it anymore. I just, when I was younger, I did, when I was in my, teenage years. I'm speaking like I'm some old man. I'm 22. I was literally a teenager 4 years ago. But in my teenage years, I really liked it. It was nice to be able to connect with friends and see what they're up to. But now I just don't give a fuck. I just, not about my friends or anything or other people. I just don't give a fuck to be on social media. And I just also think it's just not social media in general. I just don't think it's conducive for your mental health. I can just speak from my own personal experiences. So yeah, that's a little bit of a rant. But then again, that's kind of like what podcasts are for, right? So I think it's impacted social media and content, even though they're, synergistically kind of like this, the under the same umbrella. Content in general, social media, I feel like is under that umbrella of content. I feel like it's definitely impacted our attention spans. And let me know what you guys think. It's a pretty interesting topic of discussion, and I'm curious to see if you guys, see how you feel. So the last topic of discussion for today's podcast, I want to go over this whole Amber Heard, Johnny Depp trial. But I know what you're thinking. You're waiting to hear if I'm Team Johnny or Team Amber. I'm quite the opposite. In fact, I'm neither. In fact, I don't give a fuck what's going on with that trial, to be honest with you. Like, people come up to me, people in my family, my friends, that they ask me like, oh, you've been following that? Have you said, like, no, I don't care. I don't, and to be quite frank, I don't know why a lot of you care either. I don't know. I don't understand what's so important about it. And I know one could counter and say, well, if you don't care, why are you talking about it? Good point. The reason why is because I think it'd be an interesting topic of discussion to discuss why do people care so much about a lot of these internet celebrity whatever conflicts that are happening. And this is obviously one of them. This is the one that's on the biggest, it's the biggest topic of discussion right now, right? Like I said, I have not been keeping track. People at my work try to tell me about it. I'm just like, look, I don't give a fuck. I don't care who wins. Like, because in reality, like, the thing is, okay, let me say this. I know the surface level reason why people care, because these are two obvious, like, these are celebrities. So, of course, like, Johnny Depp, big actor, Amber Heard, big actress, like, that, I understand that part, but I still just, I can't wrap my head around, like, why people literally care about this so much that, like, it's taking away from their lives. They've dedicated so much, like, time. They're constantly playing catch up. It's like they're a part of the jury and they, like, got to learn every single detail of what's happening. It's like, what gain are you getting from this? It bothers me. It's like, what, learning about this, what is this going to do for you? I don't understand. Is this going to make you feel like you're more informed? So when you're at Starbucks and you're talking about things with your friends and you can name every single detail about the Amber Heard trial, like, what does that say about you? It just says that you look at what's going on in other people's lives. Like, it's, in reality, it's not our business what's going on. Now, I know it's nationally televised, so of course they're doing that for a reason, because they want people to see this. But in reality, it's like, why watch it? Like, it's none of our business. The only people that know what's going on in that whole situation is really only Johnny Depp and Amber Heard and their, representative legal teams. That's it. We know nothing. We may think we do, but we don't. So, like I said, I'm not on either side. I don't give a shit what's happening. I don't care who wins. I want to know why it's so important to everybody. How is it going to affect them? That's all I care about. Now, John Campea, for example, he always eloquently states he does not like to cover TMZ drama. He only likes to cover that. He only likes to dip his foot in that area once it affects the movies. So yes, one could argue that the reason why I'm keeping up with this is because it's going to affect the films that I watch. And to that, I can't argue that that's true. But other than that, I don't know why it's so important to people. That's basically all I wanted to say about that. I just wanted to share my thoughts, because I have people that ask me almost every day. Not every day, but people come up to me a lot and they ask me, what are my thoughts on that? And I don't know why it's so important to so many people. Like I said, I want to repeat, I'm not on any one of their sides. I don't care. I just don't know why it's so important to people. Because once it's done, people aren't going to talk about it anymore. And then you're going to look back and you're like, why did I waste so much time talking about that whole thing or like stressing about it. Like there's people that are such like diehard fans of like whether you're the diehard fan of Amber Heard or Johnny Depp. People are like writing college summaries and presentations, theses about how they feel about that, and when in reality they probably should be focusing on their actual college assignments or whatever it is that they're doing, the things, their actual priorities. Instead they're focusing on that. So anyways, that's all I'll say about that. I don't want to get ahead of myself here. That'll end today's episode of Unbashful. A little bit different, a little bit of a change of pace. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and I wish you all good health, great health, happiness, and everything. And I hope you all have a great night, great day, great life. I'll see you all later on episode 28.